Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, the 2nd of November. We are in the Express Studio at the Community Media Center. My name is Jim Mayola, and it is my pleasure to be speaking with my good friend Jim Ryon. How are you today, Jim?
Oh, fine, thank you.
Fine. Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with Jim. Where and when were you born?
Well, if I can remember that far, October 13th, 1944, and I was born in Washington, D.C.
Okay, and where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Waldorf, Maryland, which is in Charles County.
Mm-hmm.
Waldorf is a very small town. In fact, that means a village in German. It was a German name.
Mm-hmm.
And right down the road was La Plata, which is I guess they had named after a river in South America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should have been pronounced La Plata.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I grew up, in Waldorf, Maryland.
Okay. Jim, Charles County had a distinction at that time when you were a young man of being one of the few places that they had legal slot machines. I don't know if you remember back that far or not.
Yes, indeed. And slot machines are everywhere. You had them in the gas stations and drugstores, supermarkets. My parents were pretty liberal. They let us do a lot of different things, but one thing we were never allowed to do was go anywhere near a slot machine. That was the absolute work of the devil. So once my older brother, my father was postmaster,
Mm-hmm.
and so my older brother walked uptown to see my father. On the way, he dropped in a restaurant and put a dime in the slot machine.
Mm-hmm.
And then proceeded to go to the post office, and by the time he had gotten in the post office, my father knew he had played the slot machine. That's how fast word travels.
Well, that tells you a little bit about the difference in our culture from then to now, because we're talking about a time when if you did something that was considered, I don't want to use the word bad, but as a youngster, you had lots of people keeping an eye on you.
Oh, yes.
Watching out for you to make sure you followed the straight and narrow.
Yeah, and there were no fences. The backyard was basically everybody's property.
Mm-hmm.
And you went past the backyard, you went across the railroad tracks, you went out in the woods. I have no idea who owned the woods there, but that's where we spent most of our time. So there were no yards. No one claimed exclusive rights to anybody's property. When you were a kid, you just went anywhere you went and played.
Mm-hmm. What kind of games did you play, Jim?
What kind of games did I play?
Mm-hmm.
Well, mostly baseball and football.
Mm-hmm.
We had no organized sports teams when I was growing up. No Little League or Little League football or baseball. None of those organizations existed. So when you played baseball, you went out in the field and you chose up sides and you played.
Mm-hmm.
Same way with football. And we would just do that, come home, put our books on the dining room table, go out and play until you heard your mom call you for dinner. And then you knew it was time to come in.
Right.
And then you had to do your homework after that.
Mm-hmm. Now, you went to grade school and high school in Charles County.
Right. Waldorf Elementary School, which was within walking distance of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And that still stands. And I understand there had been a movement to save that building, to save the elementary school from being destroyed and replaced with a business. So it still stands there.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to high school, we used to walk to the elementary school parking lot, and the buses would pick us up at Waldorf to take us to La Plata.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who went to Waldorf Elementary School had to walk to the school to get a bus ride to the high school.
Mm-hmm.
So and then back again to the elementary school, and then I would walk across the cornfield to my house.
And what year did you graduate from high school?
1962.
Okay. And then what was next in Jim Ryon's life?
Okay. I graduated from high school, and then I went to college. I started playing music when I was a 10th grader, and really liked it. And actually, the band director came around and wanted to know who who would like to play trombone in the band because we're going to Ocean City for a parade. And they wanted people to round out the band. So I said, I'll do that. I'm going to go to Ocean City. So I went home and told my mother about it. She said, okay, if you're going to do that, then you have to take lessons to learn how to play the instrument. So we have a trombone. We got a trombone, and the band director showed me how to hold it. And my mother got in touch with a teacher. So from that point on, I was taking lessons, and within 6 weeks of that, I wanted to keep playing.
Wow!
I thought that was fun.
So you began playing trombone because you had a chance to
go to
Ocean City. And you've been playing trombone ever since.
That's right.
It's become your career.
That's right, yeah. I have a picture at home. It's I should have brought it. It's the band director giving me my first lesson. Somebody took a picture.
Yeah.
And here I am with the band director, and it could have been taken today with some, looked the same, some kid, band director teaching the student how to play. And my first private teacher was a gentleman by the name of Larry Weehee, who played solo trombone in the Air Force Band. And he's deceased now. He was and is known as one of the greatest trombone soloists there ever was. Incredible player. So I started taking lessons with him, and that's what I wanted to do. So when I graduated in 1962, then I went to college. I started off at a small college in North Carolina, which is High Point College. Now it's High Point University. I was there a year and decided that it didn't quite have enough of what I wanted. So a friend of mine and I hitchhiked from High Point to Greenville, which is probably a distance of about 200 miles, maybe. And we wanted to scout out East Carolina University. So we hitchhiked there and went in and just observed the music department and decided that's what I wanted to do. So both of my friend and I, we transferred after 1 year from High Point to East Carolina. And that's where I went to finish my bachelor's degree in music education. A fine school, excellent band program, good trombone teacher, good teachers. So I had a really good experience there.
Fantastic. Now, what was next in the life of Jim Ryon?
Well, let's see. That was mid-'60s. And as you know, it's a very tumultuous time. Probably the most significant time in my lifetime, yours too. Because the 1960s were actually in two parts. The first part of the 1960s, from up to about 1963, was basically part of the 50s culture. In mid-60s, the culture did a drastic change, which was brought about from the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam War and even the Beatles invasion. So we went from one culture to the other in practically overnight. And as a college student during that time, it was quite something to see. It was kind of unsettling to be a college student and facing graduation and facing obligatory service in the military. So what had always been my goal was to be a member of the Air Force Band because my teacher was. So following graduation, that's what I wanted to do. But we got caught up in the Vietnam War and the draft. The draft was a selective service, and this was before the lottery. So the draft board or the selective service board was contacted me once a month wanted to make sure I was in college because they assured me that when I got out of college I would get my letter drafted. So following college, true to their word, I received a notice that I was being drafted in the military. And I wanted to get in the Air Force Band, but unfortunately during that time all those bands were filled. I went into audition for the Air Force Band, and they said, well, we don't have any openings. And I went to the Navy Band, same thing, Marine Band. They weren't even hearing people. The Army Band at Fort Myer did let me audition there. And when I walked in, the Army band at Fort Myer. My goodness, here were all these world-famous players from the Los Angeles Philharmonic, the New York Philharmonic. They were all in the Army band because they went in there to avoid the draft, or they went in there as an alternative to getting drafted.
Right.
So I had to audition for these people. So I played an audition on a trombone for a sergeant, and he said, "Well, we don't have any openings here, but I can get you in one of the bands. Where would you like to go?" So I said, "I don't know, somewhere." Well, we have an opening at the Aberdeen Proving Ground band, and I knew that was close to home, so I said, "Sure." So sergeant got on the phone and got off and said that I could go to Aberdeen. There was an opening there. I had exactly 3 days to go home and pack up and report for induction.
Wow.
So let's see. This Army sergeant picked me up at my house. This was in December. Because it took me 4.5 years to finish college. I was a student taught fall in the year, and then I finished college in the middle of the year. So on December the 15th, our sergeant took me to Baltimore to the induction center, Fort Holabird. And I waited all day, and by the end of the day, they sent me back home. So in the Army, you learn how to wait.
Yes.
Hurry up and wait was an expression. So then that was on a Friday, and then the Monday, the sergeant took me back again. And I waited all day, and by 5 o'clock, they swore me in. And then they said, "Well, we're going to send you to Fort Dix to basic training." And they handed me an envelope and a train ticket. And so I got on the train and went all night to Trenton and got off and took a cab into Fort Dix. I walked in, and the first person I see is the sergeant. Says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I'm supposed to be in the Army." He says, "Well, where's the rest of you?" I said, "Can't you see all these people have, when they come in groups, where's the rest of you?" I said, "Well, it's just me." So after a lot of harassment, I fell in with a company of recruits. And in the Army, it's always whenever you're first, you're in charge. So the person who walked in 5 minutes before me was in charge. So I joined the company, and we went to the mess hall and ate, and went to our barracks, and that was about 5 a.m. And then we had to get up again at 5:30 a.m. and start the basic training routine, which was 2 months. So then after that, I got on a bus, and so they took me to Aberdeen Proving Ground, and I was in the band there called the 324th U.S. Army Band. And I stayed there for 3 years. Interesting, because people were going everywhere at that point. They had bands in Vietnam, but they also had bands in Japan and Italy and Panama and several in Germany, and I always wanted to go to one of those bands. So out of those 3 years at Aberdeen Proving Ground, I was the only one who stayed there that whole time. Everyone else rotated in and out. I think they lost my records or something.
No kidding.
So I guess I was lucky in a way, but I wanted to get away too. So.
Yeah, sure.
So that's my military experience. 3 years at Aberdeen Proving Ground with the band.
Did you enjoy that experience? Did you enjoy playing?
Well, when you do it, you don't enjoy it, but looking back on it, I'm glad I did it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, everybody in the Army complains.
Sure.
So I certainly could have had it worse. But when you're 21 years old, I think pretty much you take what they throw at you, and you don't really mind. We played parades. We played a lot of passing reviews. Some concerts. Did some, but not much touring. The band at any point may have been different. At one point, we may have had 6 trombones, and the next month we may have had only 2 trombones because people were rotating in and out. I remember once they sent a young man to us, and they said he was a trumpet player. When he walked in, he said, "Well, I don't play anything, but the Army says you play trumpet." So the director looked at me and says, "Ryan, you went to college. You teach this guy how to play trumpet. You have 6 weeks to teach him trumpet."
Goodness.
At the end of the 6 weeks, they figured he belonged to another outfit, so I was off the hook. Interesting things you see in the Army. But I'm glad I did that. It was a very good experience.
So what happened after the Army?
Okay, let's see. Well, at that point in the Army, somewhere in that point, I met my wife-to-be, who was a school teacher in Harford County. And as I was winding up my experience with the Army, I wanted to go to graduate school and get a master's degree in trombone. Because by that point, I was pretty intent on being a trombonist. So I applied at 3 places for my master's degree. I took a trip to each school and auditioned and took a battery of written tests. And those places were Northwestern University, Indiana University, and Peabody, because Peabody was close to Aberdeen, and I had established some contacts there before I got out of the service. So all 3 places accepted me, but my choice was Peabody because my wife we just met, and I wanted to stick around. I didn't want to leave. So I went and entered Peabody Conservatory in the fall of 1969, and applied trombone, and was there for 2 years. So I received my master's degree in 1971. And during those 2 years in Baltimore, I got established myself as a freelance player. So I started playing a lot of jobs at that point. And by the time I graduated, I was pretty much in the network of trombone playing. So I played shows, including the Ringling Brothers Circus, the Ice Show. There were shows at the Morris Mechanic Theater at that time. I don't think that exists anymore now. But they had Broadway type shows, so I played many shows there. There were also shows and theater work at the Lyric and at Meriwether Post Pavilion, as well as Shady Grove. Not Shady Grove, Owings Mills. What's the name of the musical theater was there? Owings Mills, Maryland had a musical theater. But anyway, all those theaters were using live musicians and had shows come in. And so the musicians for these shows would be drawn from a pool of players in the city. And so I was very fortunate all the way through the 1970s and 80s to do a lot of playing like that. And I also was doing a lot of subbing and extra work with the Baltimore Symphony. So at that point, musicians were able to get work.
Right.
And unlike now, I was very fortunate to get all that. So I played for many famous entertainers, including Elvis Presley, Barry Manilow, Tom Jones, different touring musicians who could play their shows. And so that was very exciting to do that. Yeah.
They used to have a lot of live music, didn't they? And which is now mostly recorded.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I remember my very first experience at seeing electronic music taking over live music. We were playing the Holiday on Ice show at the Baltimore Civic Center, which is now the Mariner Arena. And there was a band we were playing, and the singer got up to sing that was with the show. And I was sitting about 20 feet away, maybe. And so his lips moved, and I heard the music, but didn't quite jive. His lips are moving, but I'm hearing something else. Well, I learned later that, of course, he wasn't singing. It was all dubbed in. And that was my first experience of seeing something like that, where recorded music had taken over or substituted for live music. And then the number of musicians started to diminish. When I played the Ringling Brothers Circus, we started off with a 20, 30-piece band, and that got down to 20 pieces, 15 pieces. Next thing you know, there was no work. Then Ringling Brothers Circus carried a small group, and many of the shows since then have closed, including Painter's Mill. That's not even there anymore.
Right.
And Morris Mechanic Theater does not exist anymore. And so basically, there's hardly anybody that's doing live shows now, as far as pit orchestras, that kind of thing. So I was fortunate enough to do that all the way through the 70s and 80s. And during that time, when I graduated and got my master's from Peabody, I got married in 1970, and then in addition to doing all that performing, I still needed a job to form a basis of income. Even though I was making good money playing, it wasn't quite enough to get started with the family and so forth. So I was having to be playing a show at Painter's Mill Music Theater. It was the Sound of Music with Barbara Eden. I remember that now. And there was a trumpet player sitting next to me who was substituting for another trumpet player. So he and I were talking and joking and having a good time like you do when you do shows. And he happened to mention he was supervisor of music in Carroll County schools. And I said, well, I just got out of Peabody and I'm looking for something to do. He says, what do you want, a job in Carroll County? So I said, yes. So basically that's how you did it. We shook hands, and right there in the music theater, he offered me a job. I went in a week later and met him, the principal, and signed a contract. It's not that done that way anymore now.
No.
But it's interesting because we met each other and we enjoyed a mutual respect for music. And so he hired me based on that and not based on other things.
Sure.
So that's how I got started teaching in Carroll County.
You did have the credentials. You had a bachelor's degree in music education.
Right.
You had a master's degree in music performance.
Right.
So you carried the credentials to qualify you for the position.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
You just made the connection with the person.
Yeah, and the point I'm getting at is he hired me as someone he respected as a musician. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's an important factor, though.
Right.
If you're going to be working with children and teaching,
right.
you have to have a love of the art.
And that gentleman's name was Bob Kersey, and one of the finest people I've ever met.
So you came to Carroll County as a teacher.
Yes.
And
I was married in 1970. I lived in Harford County and commuted to Carroll County, and then in 1971 we moved to Manchester. My first teaching assignments in Carroll County were 4 elementary schools. This is 1971. Manchester Elementary School, which was a large school. Robert Moten Elementary School, which back then was a small school up on a hill across from the hospital. 2 elementary schools that no longer exist, East End Elementary School and West End Elementary School. Now the East End Elementary School is now, I think, a health club.
Right.
West End Elementary School existed somewhere over near Union Street.
Right.
And of course that is no longer. Well, back then those 2 schools, East and West End, were very small schools, and with some wonderful people I worked with, including a wonderful cafeteria staff that always makes sure I had the stewed tomatoes when I went there. Because I had stewed tomatoes once, I said, this is really good. So every time I went back, once a week, there was stewed tomatoes for me there. So those were the 4 schools. Manchester was the largest one, so the biggest program, and Robert Moten was pretty good size too. The other 2 schools were kind of small, and we combined them for concerts. Yeah. So I had 4 schools to start with. Yeah.
So you're teaching elementary music, instrumental music.
Right.
Okay.
4th and 5th grade, elementary instrumental music. My job was to recruit and start kids in the 4th grade and continue on to the 5th grade. In Manchester, it included the 6th grade, not the other schools. So Manchester, I taught through the 6th grade, and then they moved on to North Carroll Junior High School, not middle school. Because junior high school had grades 7 through 9. Robert Moten and the other schools were grades 4 and 5, and then they went, I guess, to West Middle, I guess, at that point. So that's how that worked at the elementary schools. I had to recruit students, teach them how to play, carry them through the 5th grade, and move them on to middle school.
Did you like that work?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Working with children, teaching them a love of music.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And at that point too, basically the parents and the students were very supportive. Right.
How long did
I had some wonderful administrators I worked with.
How long did you do that, Jim?
Okay, well, I taught elementary school through the 1970s. I think it was about the middle of the 70s, 1976, 77. I started working toward a Doctor of Musical Arts degree in Washington, Catholic University, one course at a time. And then I took a year off sabbatical leave in the mid-70s to study full-time at Catholic University. And at that point, I I still commuted to and from Manchester, but I spent a good 4 days a week at Catholic University, really doing intensive work in my classes. And then after that, back to teaching. But all in all, I studied at Catholic University 7 or 8 years to finish my doctorate degree, but 1 year was full-time.
Right.
And I started teaching with studying with a wonderful teacher named John Marcellus, who I consider to me as the most influential teacher I've ever had. Yeah. So I finished that and got my doctorate in musical arts in 1978. That's when I was still teaching in elementary schools. By that time, though, when I came back after my sabbatical, they had moved my schools, so I was from the north end of the county to much of the south end of the county. So I was at Eldersburg, at Freedom, New Freedom Elementary School, Winfield Elementary School, I think. So a lot of those schools in the southern part of the county, and they were smaller schools. So I was doing it 5 schools, and I was doing that through the 70s. Yeah.
But at some point in time, you went from elementary school to high school, didn't you?
No, not high school.
Not high school.
Never did teach high school. I might add, during that time, I was still very active as a player, and I established a brass quintet in the late 70s, along with my friend Wayne Cameron, who's a very good trumpet player. So we established the Chesapeake Brass Quintet, which was at that time one of the few brass quintets. There were a few others, not like now where they're everywhere.
Right.
So we established the brass quintet, and we rehearsed a lot, and we played concerts and things, and we are still together. So we are now, since 1978 roughly, still playing a lot of gigs. Yeah.
Amazing. The same group of guys?
Well,
Changed
one or two
personnel.
people are different, but basically we're still the same basic people.
Yeah.
Now there are probably brass quintets coming out of the trees everywhere. So. But back then, there weren't very many regular established brass quintets, so we were one of them. We had a library, we rehearsed a lot, and did a lot of exciting things. So now we do a lot of work too, not so many concerts, just mostly ceremonial work, some receptions and so forth. But back to your question about the teaching. In and around 1980, I decided I wanted to make the leap from elementary school to middle school. So my good friend at North Carroll Junior High, by that time I think they became a middle school. His name was Jack Markert. And Jack was a wonderful guy, and he had a really good trombone player, and he and I were very good friends. But Jack passed away, had a heart attack. That was a really difficult time. So at that time, then that opened up the middle school, and I decided I wanted to apply for that. So I applied for North Carroll Middle School, and they gave me that job. I think this was around 1980. So then I took the leap from elementary school to middle school. So I was at North Carroll Middle School throughout the 80s, and decided I wanted to do some work in Westminster. So in and around 1990, then I started teaching at East Middle School in Westminster.
Okay.
So I never did high school, and the reason I never did high school is was active as a player, and high school situations tend to really take all your time up.
Sure.
So I didn't want to take my time up away from my family nor my performing. So I decided not to go into the high school.
Did you find middle school more rewarding than elementary? I know it had to be different.
Just different.
Just different, yeah.
Yeah. But I think by the time I went to middle school, I was ready for that.
Okay.
I was ready for a little bit older kids. So that was very, very enjoyable, yeah. And every grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th, were totally different. 6th graders, totally different than 7th grader. 8th graders, totally different. So you had to gear yourself and prepare yourself for each different grade. When the 6th graders came in, you were one person. When the 8th graders came in, you were a totally different person.
So what did you do when you had a concert and you had all 3 grades?
Well, you had, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You kind of have to go nuts, I guess. But I had lots of parent helping, so we'd have the concerts, all the grades would come in, each group would be in a different classroom, and I'd have enough parents to cover each classroom. And when it came time for the sixth graders to play, we'd go on stage, go back to the classroom, and I would signal to the seventh graders to play, and then the seventh graders. And I think we actually combined the seventh and eighth grade for some of the concerts. Yeah.
Now, Jim, you also now how long did you teach in the school system? When did you retire from that?
1971 through 2002.
Okay.
So 31 years I taught in public schools. I retired, and when you're in the military, that counts full credit toward retirement.
Sure.
So 3 years in the military, 31 years teaching. I retired with 34 years
of service
experience. In Carroll County of the state of Maryland, 30 years is considered the time after which you can retire. So basically I was in for 34 years if you count military service. So I retired with full benefits in 2002.
But you have not been idle since retirement.
No. I still continue to teach at the college level, and even before I retired from public school, I was teaching at Messiah College, and found that was too busy, so I kind of broke away from that. After college, after I retired, then Gettysburg College offered me a position. I was teaching there as an adjunct. That means adjunct means part-time, and also teaching at Shepherd University. I started doing that 2 years ago, so I continue to do that now. That's a very, very great program. I'm enjoying that a lot. So I do adjunct college teaching as well as teaching in my home, and very busy performing too.
Now you've also taught at McDaniel College.
At McDaniel College, yeah, and I'm still on the staff there. Right, my name's still on the door. Okay, and we're waiting for students to come.
Sure. And another college in Pennsylvania?
Well, I taught at Messiah College for a number of years, but when I was there, at some point, I was just overwhelmed with so much because we're also playing in the Harrisburg Symphony, which was very time-consuming. So I had to make a change, so I decided to break away from Messiah College because I was teaching in public school, playing in the Harrisburg Symphony, teaching private students, and doing freelance playing. So something had to go, and that was it.
I am suspecting that Jim Ryon will continue to play the trombone as long as he can draw breath. I just detect that.
I'm sure of that, yeah.
Yes. And will probably continue to teach for as long as he can find students.
Oh, that's correct.
Which is a good thing. You, I would bet, have some stories to tell about some of your students. I suspect you've had some very successful students in your career.
I know of several students that have gone on to teach in colleges. One student I had went on to become a music manager, and now manages the personnel manager of the St. Louis Symphony. Several students have gone on to be professional players in service bands. So I'm sure that many have gone out and done a lot of those things. I just don't happen to know about them right now.
Sure. Yeah. So it's been a very rewarding career.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And during this time, too, I was starting my family. In the mid-'70s, I really started building a family. Our first child was Stephen, and that was followed several years later with my daughter Hillary, and followed by my daughter Ashley. And so as they were growing up, they were busy in music programs, and my daughters especially were involved in dance and theater. So I'm very proud of them. Now, Stephen is in his mid-30s, and just got word that I have a second grandchild there.
Congratulations.
His son Maxwell is 3.5, and now my granddaughter's name is Mary. My daughter Hillary is a professional singer, and she has sung in New York City and now sings in Washington, D.C. I won't go into say all the things she has done. She has quite an impressive resume. She was married this summer. And then my youngest daughter, Ashley, is living in Pittsburgh. All three of my children are college graduates. Hillary has a master's degree from Peabody. She went to West Virginia University for a bachelor's. Ashley has her bachelor's degree from IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And Stephen has his degree from Virginia Tech. So we were able to put all three of our kids through college.
Wonderful. Jim, I always close my interviews with two questions, and the first one is, you've been in Carroll County and had a lot of Carroll County experiences. You've been around here for a good long while.
Wait a minute.
Well, 31 years in the school system, so you've seen the county for a goodly number of years. And my question is a very simple one. What kind of changes have you seen in the county since you first observed it?
Well, that's like asking what kind of changes have occurred in Waldorf between then and now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Waldorf has changed from, as you know, a small town to basically something that you can't even separate from Washington, D.C.
Right.
Just an extension of the entire urban area.
Mm-hmm.
So Waldorf is no longer recognizable. My street is no longer recognizable. It's totally different. Now, Carroll County hasn't quite gotten to that point yet, but it's much different. Let's see. The North Carroll area, when I moved here, there were no shopping centers at all. North Carroll Middle School was at North Carroll High School, and there were no traffic lights, no buildings around there at all. It was just fields, open field. Manchester, where we lived for 2 years, so it's a very small town, one store, kind of a meat market where you on the corner there, where what now is Sheets was at that time this beautiful white house sitting on a hill that you could see as you approached on 27 going toward Manchester. You could always see this real pretty house in front of you. The road going from Manchester to Hanover, Pennsylvania was basically completely rural. In Westminster, we did have the Westminster Shopping Center.
Right.
That was there. And also the shopping center over on the western part of the town, right down the hill from West Middle School. That was the shopping center there. And 140S was, and there was a downtown Westminster. So I'd say much of the core of Carroll County is the same. I haven't noticed as much growth as I've seen other places, but I think the biggest growth probably is in the north and the south part of Carroll County. Westminster is probably much the same.
Right.
I'm sure if you go down to Eldersburg, you'll see a lot of things there that you didn't see 30 years ago, and certainly North Carroll has mushroomed. People coming up from Baltimore and settling in.
Okay.
But yeah, big difference there.
Okay. A lot of growth. A lot of growth and development. My final question, and you can answer this in any way you want, but if you were going to give some advice to a young person who was getting ready to start a career or start a family, getting ready to get out of high school or college and get their first job or start a family, get married and settle down, what advice would you give that person?
Well, that's a difficult question because it depends on the person.
Sure.
Giving advice to, and what they want to do. So if a student asked me that they weren't sure what they wanted to do, I don't know how I'd answer that because I'd have to know where their direction lies. Certainly, I would not recommend every single person to go to college.
Right.
I suppose we'll narrow that down to someone who thinks they'd like to go into music business. And assuming that by the time they had reached the end of their high school, they had achieved a certain skill, ability, then I would recommend to that person to shop around and look at what colleges they're interested in, what they want to do in music business, because there are many more opportunities in the music business now than there used to be. For example, when I went to college, you studied music education or performance. Now you can study music in the technology, recording industry, music management, in addition to music education and performance. So there's many more fields out there to pursue. So I'd recommend that they look at all those fields, and I'd also recommend to every music student they learn 2 or more instruments, not just one. If you learn to play the trumpet, you should also be able to play guitar or bass or drums or sing. And so the idea is to get yourself as marketable as you can. So you're not just tied to one instrument.
Right.
I say that from experience because I'm not like that. Somebody told me that, and I would have pursued that. And then to find out what they want to do after college. And I would leave, I would say to someone to very seriously consider going into one of the military bands after college. some people go right from college to teaching, that's fine. But some people, I think, once you start teaching, that's it. You're going to be doing that.
Right.
And a young person maybe would like to do something else before they go into that full-time career.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not married, you don't have a family, I'd say graduate from college and go into something like that. Mm-hmm. And then pursue your other career.
And there are a lot of opportunities in the military.
Oh, yeah. My son-in-law is in the Air Force Band, and my daughter-in-law is in the Army Field Band.
Mm-hmm. And rewarding experiences, a chance to travel and meet people and and enjoy your musical career.
The main bit of advice I think is to give people is be able to do a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Don't specialize in one because you don't know what's going to happen. So diversify.
Well, Jim, that's great advice. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time for your interview.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.